The sky above the crimson moon of
convergence is
Halvian
upon
Prime
us.
burned like
We must
fire.
act in
Red
unison
clouds
to
rolled over
navigate
the dark
coming
surface
storm.
as Captain Ryland Drake's small freighter descended through the atmosphere. He came here for one reason, to collect a gambling debt. A simple job, in and out. No trouble. Ryland wasn't a hero, not anymore. He used to serve in the Frontier Defense Fleet. But that was before politics ruined the cause he believed in. Now he was a collector, someone who got back credits for dangerous people across dangerous worlds. He didn't enjoy the work, but it kept his ship flying and his stomach full. This time his client wanted money from a man called Duke Halvar Threx, a high-ranking alien noble from the Velkari Dominion. The Duke was known for his wealth, arrogance, and cruelty. Rumor said he owned slaves, exotic beasts, and a private army. Ryland knew this job wasn't as simple as his employer promised, but he needed the money. His ship was falling apart. His oxygen filters were 3 days from failing. Just a quick stop, he told himself as he adjusted his flight gloves. Grab the credits. Leave before anyone shoots. The landing pad was made of polished obsidian stone. The moment Ryland stepped out, he felt dozens of eyes on him. Guards in silver armor, alien servants with pale green skin, and floating drones scanning every move he made. A guard with a tall spear approached. "State your business, human," he said in a deep metallic tone. Ryland smiled lightly, though his eyes stayed cold. "I'm here to collect a debt. Duke Threx owes credits to the Syndicate. I've come for payment," the guard sneered. "The Duke doesn't take orders from humans." Ryland's voice stayed calm. "Then he'll understand what happens when he doesn't pay." The guard frowned but motioned for Ryland to follow. They walked through long marble halls that glowed faintly from the alien energy pulsing within the walls. Every statue along the corridor looked alive, with glowing eyes that followed his movement. Finally, they entered the grand hall. At the far end sat the Duke himself, an enormous alien with dark blue skin, 4 glowing eyes and golden tattoos swirling down his arms. His clothing shimmered like molten silver. A dozen guards stood behind him, each holding plasma rifles. "Ah," the Duke said with a grin that showed sharp fangs. "A human dares walk into my hall? How brave." Ryland kept his voice steady. "You owe 50,000 credits to the Syndicate. Pay now and I'll be gone before dinner." The hall went silent. Then laughter filled the air, cold and cruel. The Duke leaned forward. "And what if I refuse?" "Then," Ryland said, his hand resting casually on the blaster at his hip, "I'll take something worth the same amount." That was when Ryland heard a soft, trembling voice from behind the throne. "Please, my lord, you promised not to do this anymore." A figure stepped out of the shadows. She was unlike any being Ryland had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like polished amethyst, her hair silver white and soft as mist. Her eyes, large, luminous, and full of quiet sadness, locked with his for a single heartbeat. In that moment, the room seemed to fade away. The Duke glanced over his shoulder, annoyed. "Go back to your chambers, Soraya, Soraya." The name echoed in Ryland's mind. The Duke's wife, but she didn't move. "He's just doing his job, Halvar," she said softly. "Let him leave in peace." The Duke's laughter returned, but this time darker. "Peace for a human debt collector? My dear, you misunderstand. He came into my house, insulted me, and demanded payment. He will not leave alive." Ryland's instinct screamed at him. His hand gripped the blaster. The guards began to close in. The Duke raised his hand lazily. "Kill him." The first shot came from Ryland. The plasma bolt hit a guard square in the chest, sending him crashing into a pillar. Chaos broke loose. Energy bolts filled the air. Ryland rolled behind a statue, fired twice more, dropped one guard, then another. His moves were sharp, efficient. Military training buried under years of dust but never forgotten. The Duke roared, standing from his throne, swinging a massive energy whip that cut through the air with lightning. The weapon smashed a column to dust. Ryland dodged left, firing again, his breathing rough but steady. "I told you. Pay your debts." He jumped across the floor, sliding to the steps of the throne. Smoke filled the hall. 2 more guards rushed in, gone in seconds under his aim. When he finally reached the throne, the Duke's whip cracked again, barely missing his head. Sparks flew as the whip struck the floor beside him. Ryland aimed upward and fired. The plasma bolt hit the Duke's shoulder, sending him sprawling. For a moment, everything went still. The Duke lay on the marble floor, snarling in pain. Ryland pointed the blaster at his chest. "Your debt's paid in blood now. Then, just as he was about to turn away, he felt a hand on his arm. Soraya stood beside him, her eyes wide with fear but also with something else. Hope. Please, she whispered. Take me with you. Rylan blinked. What? I can't stay here, she said quickly, trembling. He's not my husband. He bought me. My people sold me to him for power. I'll die here if I stay. Rylan looked at her. He wasn't the kind of man who saved people anymore. He just did jobs, took credits, and left. But something in her voice, the way she looked at him, desperate but proud, made him hesitate. Behind them, the Duke groaned and reached for a small control on his wrist. An alarm screamed through the palace, shrill and echoing. Guards! The Duke shouted. Kill them both! Rylan cursed. You're making this hard, lady. Please, she said again, tears in her voice. Don't leave me here. He made his choice. Fine. Stay close. He grabbed her hand, fired one last bolt into the Duke's console, and ran. The hall exploded behind them as alarms blared. Doors locked. Drones swarmed from the ceiling. The two of them sprinted through corridors glowing red with emergency lights. Soraya struggled to keep up, her long robe torn, her bare feet bleeding. Rylan slowed for her, blasting down a drone that got too close. Outside, the night air of Halvian burned cold. The fortress guards poured from every gate. Rylan's freighter sat at the edge of the courtyard, engines already hot. They ran for it. Laser bolts chased them. The ground exploded at their heels. Keep running, Rylan shouted. Soraya tripped, but he pulled her back to her feet. Together they reached the ramp. He hit the panel and the ramp folded up as the ship lifted off. The roar of the engines drowned out the shouts below. Inside, the ship's cockpit glowed with blue light. Rylan dropped into the pilot's seat, flipping switches. Hang on! Soraya clung to the seat beside him as the ship shot upward into the stormy sky. Energy beams streaked past, fired from the fortress turrets. One hit the tail, shaking the ship violently. Damn it, Rylan muttered, correcting course. They're locking on! Soraya's hands glowed faintly, her alien energy reacting to fear. They won't stop until we're dead, she said. Rylan looked at her. Then we make sure they fail. He pushed the throttle. The freighter roared into the clouds, lightning flashing around them. Below, the Duke's fortress grew smaller and smaller. On the radar, a dozen enemy ships began to rise in pursuit. Rylan exhaled slowly. Looks like this just got complicated. Soraya sat quietly, staring out the window at the red world fading behind them. She whispered, He'll never forgive this. You killed him. Rylan glanced at her. I've killed worse. He'll send armies. He gave a half smile. Then we'll make them chase shadows. She turned to look at him fully, her silver hair glowing under the cockpit lights. Why did you help me? He hesitated, then said, Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. The ship broke through the clouds and entered the black of space. The stars stretched into lines as the jump engines engaged. As they vanished into hyperspace, a message echoed across the sector networks, broadcast by the Duke's forces. Human outlaw Rylan Drake abducts the Duke's wife. Wanted, dead or alive, but Soraya knew the truth. She wasn't taken. She escaped, and for the first time in her life, she felt free. The stars outside the cockpit shimmered like silver dust as Rylan's freighter drifted through deep space. For the first time in hours, the alarms were silent. The storm of gunfire and pursuit had faded behind them, lost in the chaos of hyperspace. Rylan leaned back in the pilot seat, exhausted. The right engine was running hot and half the navigation screen flickered with static. The ship had taken more damage than he'd thought. Still, they were alive. That counted for something. Soraya sat quietly beside him, her violet skin glowing faintly in the dark light of the cabin. Her eyes stayed fixed on the stars. She had not spoken since their escape. Finally, Rylan broke the silence. You all right? She nodded slowly. Yes, I think so. I didn't believe we'd make it out alive, he smirked tiredly. Neither did I. For a moment, both of them just listened to the low hum of the ship. Then Soraya whispered, You killed him, didn't you? The Duke. Rylan didn't answer right away. He looked down at his gloves, still scorched from the plasma fire. Yeah, he said quietly. Didn't have much of a choice. He wanted me dead. Probably wanted you dead too. Soraya turned toward him. Her eyes shimmered with mixed feelings, relief, sadness, and confusion. I should feel guilty, she said softly. But I don't. Good, Rylan said. Means you finally stopped living under his chains. She looked down at her hands, trembling slightly. My people will never forgive me. The Duke was a noble from the Velkari court. His death will bring war, and I... She paused, her voice breaking. I'll be hunted. Rylan gave a dry laugh. Join the club. I've been hunted since I left the fleet. He stood and walked to the back of the cockpit, grabbing a small medkit from the wall. Your feet are bleeding, he said. Sit down. Soraya hesitated but obeyed. Rylan knelt, gently wrapping her wounded feet in clean fabric. His touch was rough but careful. You didn't have to help me, she said softly. Yeah, he replied, but I did. Their eyes met again, and for a brief second, something unspoken passed between them. The hum of the ship, the faint crackle of power conduits, the endless stars outside, it all faded. Only silence and the warmth of understanding remained. Then the radar beeped. Rylan jumped up, frowning. No. What is it? Soraya asked. He looked at the screen. The Duke's fleet. They found us. The radar showed 6 ships closing in fast. The Velkari patrols. Fast, sleek, and deadly. Rylan's hands moved quickly across the controls. We're too far from any friendly port. If we try to outrun them, they'll burn our engines before we hit safe space. Soraya stood beside him. Is there anywhere we can hide? He thought for a second. Maybe. The Vesper Nebula. No sane pilot goes near it. It's full of ion storms and magnetic fields. Most ships that enter never come back, Soraya frowned. You call that hiding? He gave her a small grin. It's the best kind of hiding. The kind no one expects. Without waiting for approval, he slammed the throttle. The ship roared to life, jumping toward the swirling lights of the nebula. The Vesper Nebula loomed ahead like a storm made of fire and lightning. Electric arcs danced across space, lighting up their faces with flashes of blue and white. Soraya gripped the seat. Are you sure about this? Not at all, Rylan said, teeth clenched. Hold on. The moment they entered the storm, the ship began to shake violently. Energy readings spiked. The lights flickered. The navigation system screamed with error signals. Shields at 40%, Rylan shouted. Can you control it? She asked, her voice trembling. Barely. The storm's pulling us in. The entire ship groaned like a living creature. The air crackled with static. Sparks burst from a panel beside them. Soraya's alien energy began to glow brighter. Her skin markings lit up, her eyes shining like twin stars. She reached out instinctively and touched the ship's console. The light stabilized slightly. Rylan blinked in surprise. What are you doing? I'm trying to help, she said, her voice strained. My energy can calm unstable fields, but it won't last long. He grinned. Well, keep doing that. The ship cut through the storm like a wounded beast. Outside lightning lashed across the hull. The sensors went dark. For several terrifying minutes, it felt like they were falling through hell. Then suddenly it was over. The turbulence faded. The light softened. The ship drifted into a calm pocket of space surrounded by glowing clouds. They had made it. Rylan leaned back, panting. Well, that was fun. Soraya smiled faintly. You humans are insane. Yeah, he said, smirking. That's what keeps us alive. For the next few hours, they repaired the ship in silence. Rylan replaced damaged wires and patched the hull while Soraya cleaned the burns from his arms and hands. She moved with quiet grace, her every motion careful. Why did you become a debt collector? She asked suddenly. He paused, thinking. Because war makes heroes useless, he said finally. After the fleet fell apart, nobody cared about soldiers. People like me had 2 choices, die proud or live dirty. She studied him for a moment. But you still help people, he laughed. Help? Lady, I killed half a fortress today. You saved me. Rylan looked at her and shook his head. You saved yourself. I just gave you a ride. Soraya smiled sadly. You humans always say such strange things. Days passed. They hid inside the nebula, moving from one quiet sector to another. They shared stories, repaired the ship, and survived on ration packs and recycled water. Soraya told him about her world, how her kind believed in strict order, how her marriage was nothing but a contract between families. Love, she said softly, is considered a weakness among the Velkari. Rylan looked at her. Then maybe they've never seen what real strength looks like. She smiled, her silver eyes shining. And what does it look like, Captain? Someone who walks away from a life of pain, he said. Even when the whole galaxy tells them not to. One night, while Rylan worked on the engines, Soraya came to him quietly. Her long hair glowed in the dim blue light. "You can drop me off at the next free world," she said softly. "You've done enough." He looked up from the console. "You sure? The Duke's family will still come for you." "I know," she said, her voice steady. "But I can't keep hiding behind you. I need to stand on my own." Rylan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." He looked away, his jaw tight. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Soraya asked, "And what about you? Where will you go?" He smiled faintly. "Wherever the next job takes me." Her eyes softened. "You don't have to keep living like that." "Maybe not," he said quietly. "But it's all I know." The next morning, the ship approached a small outpost floating near the edge of neutral space. It wasn't much, just a trade hub and a few repair docks, but it was safe. As they prepared to land, the sensors blinked. A coded message appeared on screen. "Reward issued for capture of human Rylan Drake and Velkari fugitive Soraya Threx. Alive preferred." 1,000,000 credits, Rylan cursed. "They found us again." Soraya's face went pale. "What will you do?" He glanced at her. "What do you want me to do?" She hesitated. Then she stood, her voice firm. "We fight," he grinned. "That's my kind of answer." The first enemy ship appeared out of hyperspace, a sleek black cruiser. Then another. Then 3 more. Rylan turned to her. "You ready?" Soraya nodded, her energy markings glowing bright. "For freedom." "Yes." He powered up the engines and armed the weapons. The small freighter roared to life. As the first cruiser fired, Rylan dove the ship straight toward the enemy line, plasma cannons blazing. Explosions filled the black sky. Soraya closed her eyes and released a wave of energy that overloaded the enemy scanners. "Now!" she shouted. Rylan spun the ship into the nebula's heart again. The enemy sensors went blind. Lightning danced across their hulls. One by one, their pursuers vanished into the storm. When it was over, only silence remained. Rylan laughed in disbelief. "You're something else, Duchess," she smiled. "I told you, don't call me that. I'm Soraya now." "Just Soraya," he nodded. "And I'm Rylan, just Rylan." They shared a look that said everything words couldn't. Outside, the stars shone brighter than before. The iron comet drifted silently through the peaceful void, 2 souls finally free from their pasts. Soraya leaned back, whispering, "Where will we go next?" Rylan smiled, hands on the controls. "Anywhere we want." The engines flared blue, and their ship disappeared into the endless dark, leaving behind the legend of the human who defied a duke and escaped with his alien wife. The freighter Iron Comet drifted quietly beyond the rim of the Vesper Nebula. Its hull still smoked from the last fight, but the stars ahead looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Rylan sat in the cockpit, sipping bitter coffee from a metal cup. His eyes were tired, red from sleepless nights. For 3 days he had done nothing but fix, patch, and fly. Now the engines hummed steady, the scanners calm. But Rylan knew better than to trust silence in space. Behind him, Soraya walked barefoot through the narrow corridor. Her long silver hair glowed softly in the dim blue light. She carried 2 cups of water and placed one beside him. "You haven't slept," she said quietly. "Can't," Rylan replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those cruisers catching up." She smiled gently. "They won't find us here. Not yet." Rylan looked at her, then back to the stars. "You sound sure." "I can feel it," she said, touching her chest lightly. "Velkari ships run on resonance engines. Their energy leaves a mark. I would know if they were close." He gave a small nod. "Good. Then maybe I can finally breathe." For a long moment, they both stared at the endless darkness outside. Later, Rylan worked in the engine bay, shirt sleeves rolled up, grease on his arms. Soraya joined him, kneeling beside the power coils. "I didn't know you could handle a wrench," he joked. She laughed softly. "Velkari nobles are trained in diplomacy, not repairs. But after living with Halvar, I learned to fix things he broke." Ryland's smirk faded. "He hurt you?" Soraya didn't look up. "Not always with his hands." "But yes," Ryland gritted his teeth. He didn't know what to say, so he focused on the bolts in front of him. After a pause, Soraya spoke again. "When you killed him, I thought I'd feel peace. But it feels more like emptiness." Ryland wiped his hands. "That's because peace doesn't come right away. It creeps in when you stop looking for it." She nodded slowly, her eyes distant. By the 4th day, The Iron Comet reached the edge of an abandoned trade route, the Orion Spine, a dangerous stretch filled with old wrecks and pirates. Rylan hoped to find fuel and maybe a way to sell the stolen cargo from the Duke's vault. As they approached a derelict station, Soraya frowned. Something feels wrong. Rylan checked the radar. No signals. No life forms. Looks safe enough, they docked anyway. The air inside the station was stale and cold. Lights flickered across metal corridors covered in dust. Rylan held his blaster ready. Stay close. Soraya followed, her bare feet quiet against the steel floor. They passed rows of abandoned shops, old vending machines, and shattered windows. Then suddenly Rylan heard movement. A shadow slipped across the far hallway. He raised his weapon. "Show yourself!" A deep voice replied. "Easy, friend. You don't want to shoot me." Out of the darkness stepped a tall man in a tattered pilot's coat. His skin was bronze, his eyes tired but sharp. "Name's Jax Marrow," he said, hands raised. "Former fleet like you, I'd bet." Rylan didn't lower his weapon. "How do you know that?" Jax grinned. "Only ex-soldiers walk like they're ready to fight the air itself." Soraya watched quietly, reading the man's aura. "He's not lying," she whispered. Rylan hesitated, then lowered his gun slightly. "What are you doing here?" "Scavenging," Jax said. "This station's been dead for years, but sometimes dead things still have heartbeats." He nodded toward Rylan's ship. "Yours, for example. That's a good machine. Modified thrusters, old Terran frame. You're far from home, friend." "Not here to make friends," Rylan replied. Jax chuckled. "Didn't think so. Still, you look like someone who could use a favor." Rylan frowned. "What kind of favor?" Jax's smile faded. "Word around the belt says there's a price on your head. 1,000,000 credits, dead or alive. Human male, Rylan Drake. Wanted for murder and abduction." Rylan's hand twitched toward his blaster. "You planning to collect it?" Jax shook his head. "Not me, but others will. You need a place to hide. And I know a station where the Dominion's eyes never reach." Rylan looked at him suspiciously. "Why help me?" Jax shrugged. "Because the enemy of the Dominion is a friend of mine." Soraya stepped forward. "Can we trust him?" Rylan stared at Jax for a moment, then finally said, "Maybe. But if this is a trap," Jax smirked, "then you can shoot me later." A few hours later, they followed Jax's ship, a rusted cargo hauler, through a broken asteroid field. The path twisted through jagged rocks and glowing dust clouds. "Where are we going?" Rylan asked over comms. "To the Free Front," Jax replied. "A base run by outlaws and rebels. No Dominion laws there. He'll fit right in." Soraya leaned toward Rylan. "Rebels? That sounds dangerous," he smiled slightly. "Dangerous is our new normal." When they finally exited the asteroid field, a massive structure appeared, a hidden station built into a hollowed moon. Dozens of ships hovered nearby, everything from stolen cruisers to patched-up freighters. "Welcome to Haven 7, Jax said proudly. Inside, the place buzzed with life, humans, aliens, and androids walking side by side. Traders shouted, mechanics worked, and mercenaries laughed over drinks. It smelled of oil, smoke, and freedom. For the first time since the escape, Soraya smiled. "It's beautiful," Rylan chuckled. "You call this beautiful?" She nodded. "It's alive. That's beauty enough." Jax led them through a narrow passage into a small bar lit by neon lights. "Wait here," he said. "I'll talk to the quartermaster, see if he can give you fuel and clean ident codes." As soon as he left, Soraya looked around, curious. But Rylan's instincts were screaming. Something felt off. A group of mercenaries in dark armor sat in the corner, their eyes fixed on him. One of them whispered into a wristcom. Rylan cursed under his breath. "We've got trouble." Before Soraya could ask, 3 men stood up and started walking toward them. The first mercenary drew his weapon. "Rylan Drake, you're under Dominion bounty." Rylan pushed Soraya behind the table. "Stay down." Blaster fire erupted. The bar exploded into chaos. Patrons ran for cover. Bottles shattered. Rylan ducked, rolled, and fired twice, 2 mercs down. The third grabbed Soraya by the arm, shouting, "We only need her alive." Soraya gasped, her eyes glowing bright. Energy pulsed from her skin, throwing the mercenary across the room. Rylan took the chance and fired the last shot. Silence fell. Smoke filled the air. Alarms blared. Jax rushed back in. "What the hell happened?" Rylan holstered his blaster. "You tell me. Thought this place was safe." Jax looked around at the bodies, then cursed. Guess the Dominion bought some of our own people. Rylan glared. We're leaving. Jax held up his hands. Wait, I can still help you. There's a contact here. Someone who smuggles people off-grid. She can erase your record. Rylan didn't trust him, but Soraya placed a hand on his arm. We have to try. We can't keep running forever. Rylan sighed. Fine, but if this goes wrong, it won't, Jax promised. They followed him to a quiet hangar where an old woman waited beside a small shuttle. Her eyes were mechanical, her hands covered in metal plating. I'm Taryn, she said in a raspy voice. You're the human who stole a Duchess. Not anymore, Rylan said flatly. She's free, Taryn smiled faintly. Freedom always has a price. The Dominion doesn't forgive. If you stay together, they'll never stop hunting you. Rylan glanced at Soraya. We'll manage, Taryn nodded. Then you'll need new names and clean codes. I can do that for a price. Rylan crossed his arms. How much? 20,000 credits, Rylan groaned. Figures, Soraya stepped forward. We don't have that much. Taryn studied her carefully. You're Velkari, aren't you? Your energy alone is worth 10 times that. Rylan moved between them. Not for sale. The old woman smiled, impressed. Didn't think so. All right. I'll take half now, half later. Deal? Rylan nodded. Deal. As Taryn began working, Soraya sat near the shuttle window watching the stars. You know, she said softly, I could leave. Start somewhere far away. Live quietly. Rylan didn't look up. You could, but I don't want to. He paused, meeting her gaze. You sure about that? She smiled faintly. You gave me a choice when no one else did. Wherever you go, I'll go. Rylan exhaled slowly, something warm stirring in his chest. Then I guess we're partners now. Outside, Haven 7's neon lights reflected off the ship's hull. The galaxy was still hunting them, but for the first time neither of them cared. They weren't just fugitives anymore. They were free souls, united by chance, bound by defiance. And as the iron comet lifted from the station once more, the stars seemed to whisper their story. The human who defied a duke, and the alien woman who chose him over an empire.